Good morning, everyone. So today I'm going to talk about self-compassion for dealing with difficult emotions. Oftentimes we're overwhelmed by difficult feelings, anger, sadness, fear, shame, and many more. And we have a tendency to add to these difficult feelings and create suffering. So in Buddhism, pain and suffering are two very different things. So pain is inevitable. Pain in the form of physical pain, emotional pain, and suffering is optional. Suffering is what we add on to the pain, often through resistance to reality. So pain plus resistance equals suffering. We resist pain by drinking or using drugs, smoking cigarettes, avoiding thinking about the pain, saying, I'm not thinking about that right now, bottling it up, pushing it away. Distraction. We live in a world of endless possibilities to distract yourself from the present moment, as well as engaging in different psychological defense mechanisms like projection. So projecting our own emotions or thoughts onto others. We also resist it by blaming others or blaming ourselves. The Lankavatara Sutra explains that though everything is mind only, meaning that we do not see the world clearly. Instead, everything we see, objects, our perceptions of different personalities, the people who we put on pedestals, the people who we dislike, all of these things, according to the Buddha, are seen through our own projections, our own conditioning. We're not often seeing the Buddha nature that we and others truly have. So when we really contemplate it, we can realize that no one can make us angry. No one can make us sad. Maybe you've had that experience where somebody has said, you made me angry. Or maybe you have said to somebody else, you made me feel this way. No one can make us think or feel anything. And this can be a little bit scary of an idea, because we've clung to the idea that other people are responsible for our feelings for a long time. So we are conditioned to think and feel in certain things in certain situations. Two different people would feel very differently in the same situation due to their conditioning. Pardon me. These are the seeds that are planted deep in what is called our alaya vijnana, our storehouse consciousness. This deep well within us that stores all of our experiences. The seeds of anger, sadness, fear, shame, happiness. They are planted by our school, by our parents, our culture, the media. Everything we do conditions us all the time. So we're not only conditioned in childhood, we are constantly conditioning ourselves and being conditioned from birth until death. So this is why we want to be careful about the things that we do, the people we surround ourselves with, the activities we engage in. We are always reinforcing mental habits. So which seeds grow? Those are the seeds that we choose to water. When I entered therapy as a teenager, I learned about the concept of self-compassion. So compassion, or karuna, as it's known in Buddhism, is one of the 4 Brahma Viharas. So one of the 4 Brahma Vihara is translated often as divine abode, would be the most word-for-word translation, or some people will translate it as the 4 immeasurable qualities. So these are qualities that we want to develop in ourselves. So loving kindness or metta is one. Sympathetic joy or mudita is another. So sympathetic joy means being happy for other people. And equanimity or upekkha is another Brahma Vihara, in addition to compassion or karuna. Self-compassion is a means of relating to difficulty with kindness. Self-compassion is much different than self-esteem. So in the 90s, there was this self-esteem movement where facilitators were going to children's schools and having assemblies where they would talk about self-esteem and try to raise the self-esteem of the kids. I vaguely remember when I was a kid in school us having one of those self-esteem assemblies. Self-esteem involves directing praise towards oneself for ego-based achievements or status. So what that means is self-esteem is, I am good enough because. It might be, I am good enough because I have a PhD, or I am good enough because I'm good at X, Y, and Z. Maybe somebody's good at cooking. Maybe somebody is good at supporting others. It's always contingent on something. And what that means is when those things are taken away, self-esteem plummets. And then people start feeling shame and badly about themselves. And then on the other hand, if people get too caught up in counting the things that they're good at, then they can become full of themselves. So the core of narcissism is when people bounce back and forth between thinking that they are amazing and that they are God to thinking that they are the worst person on earth, and back and forth, back and forth. The word narcissism has been used a lot lately on the internet, and sometimes it's lost its meaning, but that's the actual definition. So self-compassion is very different. It's the development of unconditional love towards themselves. Unconditional. And it's become quite big in Buddhist-influenced Western psychotherapy. So it involves 3 different components. Mindfulness. So as we're doing self-compassion practices, it's helpful to pay attention to what's coming up for us in the moment. Self-kindness. So a sense of love and warmth directed towards the self in the face of hardship rather than intense criticism. And we know in Buddhism that we talk a lot about the concept of no self, anatta. This is a different thing. So when we talk about anatta, we're talking about on the ultimate level. Right now we're talking about the relative or conventional level. We need both. Sometimes there can be confusion and people might think that they need to be only in the ultimate level all the time. But if they were, then it would be very difficult to have a conversation. On the other hand, some people dwell in the conventional or relative level and they don't get the opportunity to experience much more. So we want to balance. So the conventional self. The third, so we've got mindfulness, self-kindness, and the third is common humanity. This is important. So this is a recognition that suffering is part of the universal experience of all beings around the world. So the suffering, as I mentioned earlier, is that added on layer to the pre-existing pain. It's like being hit with two arrows. The first arrow is pain. The second arrow, maybe we hit ourselves with when we say things like, I'm so stupid for experiencing this pain. Or when we say things like, I shouldn't be experiencing this. So when we say, I'm so stupid, this is a form of retroflexion. An emotion, rather than being experienced outward, is put inwards. When we say I shouldn't be experiencing this pain, this is introjection. This is the internalization of somebody else's beliefs or values. So instead we want to simply experience the pain, feel the pain, and know that it is impermanent. So we're watching difficult experiences, be they physical pain, emotional pain, like clouds in the sky, knowing that this is the weather today, and tomorrow or an hour from now, it will be different. Especially if you are in Canada around this time of year, it will be different very frequently because the weather here changes a lot. So I'm going to introduce a meditation that you can do to develop self-compassion. First, I'm going to describe it, and then we'll have some time where I will guide it. So this meditation goes with the acronym R.A.I.N. R.A.I.N. meditations are a way that we can practice self-compassion in the midst of difficulty. The R in R.A.I.N. stands for recognize. So during the meditation, you'll recall something difficult, and it's very important that we're not recalling on purpose the worst thing that's ever happened to us. This might be your first time doing this, or maybe you don't do it very often. So maybe we're recalling something that's like a 3 or a 4 out of 10, something that was mildly difficult, so that you're not overwhelming yourself. And as you get more used to this, you can do progressively more difficult situations. So we're recognizing what emotions are coming up for me right now. And it's important to be aware of our language around emotions. So we're not saying, I am sad, I am scared. That's not who you are. We're saying, I feel sadness, or fear is present, or, oh yes, that's anger. So labeling the emotions. simply labeling our feelings, some research has shown, can already take the heat off of our emotions through some neuroscience research that I'm not going to get into today. And then the A in R.A.I.N is allow. So we're allowing the feelings to be there. So you'll remember at the beginning I mentioned pain plus resistance equals suffering. So we're not pushing away the pain. We're not saying, I refuse to feel this is too much. We're not numbing ourselves. We're just watching it and experiencing it. You might mentally say, yes, I hear you. I'm inviting you in to the pain. The I is for investigate bodily sensations. So it's important that this is not a cognitive investigation about what happened, why the situation happened, why am I feeling this way. It's not psychoanalyzing your past. We're investigating, what does it feel like to have these emotions in my body? Where in the body do I feel sadness? What's the texture of the feeling? And then the N of R.A.I.N is nurture with self-compassion. So it can be very valuable to, when you do this practice in a minute, to put your hand on your heart when we get to that stage. Or some people, instead of their heart, they'll put wherever they feel the emotion, they'll put their hand to self-soothe. And then internally, you can say things to yourself like you would someone you really care about who's suffering. Like, it's okay, this is really hard. It's not always going to be this way. And you can remind yourself with that common humanity piece that a lot of beings all over the world are feeling this same emotion right now, because there's like 7 or 9 billion people. They may be in different situations, but there are people feeling the same emotions. Or given that there's 7 or 9 billion people on the planet, there probably are some people who are in the same situation as well. So I learned this acronym R.A.I.N when I was 16 or 17 years old in therapy, and Suko here, Bhikkhuni Tịnh Quang, also teaches it. I found that it can help me through pretty much any difficulty because it turns the volume down on the intensity of whatever I'm feeling. So it can be done in a 10-minute meditation, which I'll guide in a moment. Now I can also do it on the spot in a couple of minutes when I'm going through my day, because I've conditioned myself to use this. However, if it's a big difficulty, then I'll need to sit and do it in a longer formal meditation. It can be very emancipating to experience this, very freeing. So we realize that we can give ourselves the compassion that we may not get from others very often. Maybe compassion that we didn't get growing up. And it's important to note that we do not want to be substituting this for reaching out to others. So we still want to reach out to others. This is good for when others aren't available, or when we need to learn some self-regulation. While you're first learning this, it can be good to do it every day for a while. So you might do it every day when something is bothering you, or you might do it every day regardless of the emotion, even if it's a happy one. Just the point is that if you do it every day for a while, you'll start to condition yourself to use it more often, and then when you are struggling on the spot, that will become automatic. So now we'll have a brief meditation. So you can get into a comfortable position. You can keep your back straight. Head is floating up like a balloon. Eyes are downcast at a 45-degree angle. Back is straight but not rigid. Just begin by tapping in to the feeling of breathing. Wherever you feel the breath most strongly, it might be at your nostrils or your belly. With every inhale, labeling it in, and with every exhale, labeling it out. Each time you have a thought, just labeling it thinking, not trying to get rid of thoughts, just being aware, and then coming back to the physicality of breathing. Noticing the space between breaths. Knowing you can come back to the breath at any time if things become too difficult. And now bringing to mind a mildly troubling situation that you'd like to work with today. So again, we're not working with a trauma today, just something that might be like a 4 out of 10 in difficulty. And then once you've selected the situation, you can stop playing that tape. Just pause, recognize. The R in R.A.I.N is recognizing what emotions are coming up for me right now. So we're not saying I am the emotion, but we're labeling the emotion. I feel anger, or sadness is present. Shame is here. And moving on to the A of R.A.I.N, allowing. Just allowing these emotions to be here. Knowing that resistance will only cause suffering. So difficult emotions are knocking at the door. And if you don't let them in, they might bust down the door and mess up the house. So instead, we let them in, we invite them for tea, and then when they're finished tea, eventually, because everything is impermanent, they will leave. They deserve to be heard. It doesn't mean what they're saying is true, but we will hear them. And moving to the eye of R.A.I.N, investigating bodily sensations. So where in the body are these emotions felt? This could be anywhere. Often people will feel things at the chest, the neck, the throat, the belly. And if the feelings are too intense, you can just feel the edges of the emotions. Knowing that at any time you can go back to the breath. And we also, if it's not too intense, want to avoid resistance. Is there a particular texture to the feeling? Is it bumpy or spiky or smooth? Does it have a shape or a color? Just welcoming the feeling in. And then moving to the N of R.A.I.N, nourishing, nurturing with self-compassion. So you might take a hand and place it on your heart, or some people will place a hand wherever they feel the emotion. Just feeling the warmth of the hand soothing you. Then you might mentally say things that you would say to someone you really, really care about. You can imagine a compassionate figure and use inspiration of the types of things they would say, like the Buddha. So you might say things like, "It's okay to feel this way. This is really hard right now. I'm here for me in this moment." This feeling will not last forever. And reminding yourself of that common humanity piece. So you might say something like, "There are people all over the world feeling feelings just like this one. I'm not alone. I can have compassion for myself and for all the other people who are in a similar situation to me." Tapping into that interbeing. And then you can put your hand down when you're ready. Just coming back to the feeling of breathing. wherever you feel the breath most strongly. Each time you have a thought, just labeling it thinking. Not trying to get rid of thoughts, just being aware of them. And then coming back to every inhale and every exhale. And you might, if you would like to develop more self-compassion and find this a helpful way of emotional regulation, as we're meditating here, you might make a commitment to yourself. You might contemplate when the best time of day each day could be to do a practice like this. And once you've made your commitment, if you choose to do so, it's coming back to the feeling of the whole body sitting here. Being aware of any sounds in the room. So the R.A.I.N self-compassion practice is a really powerful practice for allowing us to feel pain and not avoid suffering, allowing us to develop more compassion for ourselves, which opens our hearts to be able to have compassion for others. So the difficult emotions that we avoid in ourselves, that we don't allow ourselves to feel, are also the emotions that we don't allow others to feel. So I'll invite you to reflect on how you would like to develop more self-compassion moving forward. It could be through this practice or another practice. I'll leave you with that today. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.